darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly.
Hello everybody, welcome to Rock the Word 153, Episode 4, Season 2. Today is Friday, March 26th. We are headed into the holiest week of the year, and it's the holiest week of the year, and the days leading up to Easter are the most somber days of the church year. And I'm completely captivated at this point in time by this part of the Lenten journey that we are about to embark upon. Holy Week, starting with Palm Sunday, of course, and then ending up with the Triduum. And so my attention turns on this Friday to next Friday, Good Friday. And I sat with this for some time, knowing that this episode would be aired on this day, thinking about a song that could capture in some way the essence of what we experience on Good Friday and in these days leading up to the Triduum. And the first song that came to my mind is a classic. In fact, it's iconic. Written by Paul Simon in 1963-64, released by Simon and Garfunkel in 1965. Of course, I'm talking about The Sound of Silence. In 2012, The Sound of Silence was listed by the Library of Congress as one of the most influential songs of all time, and the Recording Industry of America labeled The Sound of Silence the 18th most recorded song of the 20th century. That's amazing. But the version that I'd like to focus on today was a real surprise for me. And that was in the year 2015, the metal band Disturbed did a cover of this iconic song. And it's absolutely stunning. You know, I tell my students in school that the Disturbed version of Sound of Silence is an example of how even metal can be beautiful. And if you've heard it, I'm sure you'll agree. And if you haven't, please stay tuned, because it'll play at the end of this episode, as all the songs do. It's absolutely stunning. And the vocal, the urgency of the vocal and the intensity of the vocal, I think for me really captured the urgency and the intensity of the Passion of our Lord. And the words, of course, speak for themselves. That sense of desolation. You know, I think about, of course, the agony in the garden. When in 2019, I was very, very fortunate enough to lead a group to the Holy Land. And it was my first trip to the Holy Land, and it was absolutely, without question, the best trip I ever took. Because we literally walked in the footsteps of Jesus. And the day before the last on that trip, we actually said Mass in Gethsemane, and the altar was on the rock that we often see depicted as the rock that Jesus is praying on when he's in that moment in Gethsemane. And so I thought about the opening words of Sound of Silence as words that just for me capture the essence of what Jesus must have been feeling at that moment. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. And then he says, in restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp. And I just have that image of Jesus praying on that rock in Gethsemane. And I'm drawn to the words of Matthew 26, 36 to 41. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took along Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to feel sorrow and distress. Then he said to them, "My soul is sorrowful even to death. Remain here and keep watch with me." He advanced a little and fell prostrate in prayer, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." When he returned to his disciples, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, "So you could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not undergo the test. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again, I hear those words hearken, that sense of loneliness, that sense of disappointment, that sense of where are my friends, that sense of where is my help, where are my friends in my time of need? In restless dreams I walked along narrow streets of cobblestone. And if you walk the way of Jesus in Jerusalem, the way of the cross, they are narrow streets. They are streets of cobblestone. It's just unbelievable how this song brings to mind to me what must have been that sorrowful, intense feeling of, my God, if it be your will, let this cup pass me by. I mean, the full humanity of Jesus comes out in that moment so beautifully, so authentically, and as does his divinity. But not as I will, Lord, as you will. The humanity of Jesus, let this cup pass me by, the divinity, but not as I, Lord, as you will. And so that sense of the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, that feeling of being alone. And the song by Paul Simon continues, "And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices would never share, and no one dared to disturb the sound of silence." Sometimes that experience of desolation for me and you is when we feel like we're talking and nobody's listening, or when we're trying to get our point across and nobody understands, or when we're looking to our friends and there's nobody around, and we're just left. So that experience of Jesus saying to Peter, "Couldn't you just stay with me awake for 1 hour? Be careful that you might not be put to the test." And so I think part of our Lenten journey and our experience of walking the way of the Passion of Christ is when we recognize how the trials and tribulations and our own experiences of desolation and loneliness and sorrow somehow are linked to the Passion of Christ. And we are asked as a Christian community during this Holy Week to stay with that, to stay with the pain of the Passion of Christ. And I think, that again, to take it a little bit further, again in Matthew 26, but further down in that chapter, verses 69 to 74, Peter denies Jesus. "You too were with that Galilean Jesus." But Peter denied it in front of everyone, saying, "I do not know what you were talking about." As he went out to the gate, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This man was with Jesus the Nazarene." Again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." A little later, bystanders came over and said to Peter, "Surely you too are one of them. Even your speech gives you away." At that he began to curse and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately a cock crowed. Sometimes the sound of silence is created by denial. Our denial in words or actions that we know Jesus, that we are part of Jesus, that our suffering is in some way only redeemed when we connect it to the Passion of Christ. And then I think about Jesus on the cross. And I can only imagine what was going on in the mind of Jesus, in the crowd, but I have a sense that no matter what, there was a deep, abiding, deafening silence. But I also think that when we think of Jesus on the cross, we think of the words that pierce that silence. When Jesus says, when they came to the place called the skull, they crucified him. And this is, by the way, Luke's Gospel, 23, verses 33 to 36. When they came to the place called the skull, they crucified him, and the criminals there, one on his right and the other on his left. And listen to how Jesus pierces the silence. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." Can we just sit with that for a moment and take that in? The profound silence. Jesus on the cross pierces the silence with a word of forgiveness to the one on his left and the one on his right. Silence is a funny thing. It can drive us crazy. It can make us feel like we're not being heard. Or it can be that place where we profoundly meet our Lord. When Jesus was at the Garden of Gethsemane, I think for him it was both. He knew, "Father, if it be your will, let this cup pass me by, but if not, let it be as you say, not my will." So there's that sense that sometimes, even though we are in that place of distress or sorrow or pain, that somewhere in the silence of our sorrow and pain, somewhere, even if it's really deep inside, is also an opportunity for us to meet the Lord. And so as we approach Holy Week and as we approach the Triduum, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, that experience of everything from the Last Supper on, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter's denial, Judas's betrayal, the crucifixion, and then the desolation of Holy Saturday, where the earth is still, and we're in that moment of what just happened and what will happen. As the song Sound of Silence concludes, I think it even captures a sense of that experience of Holy Saturday, where it says at the very end, "And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made." You know, all the people that gave Jesus up. "And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence." In the depth of that silence, as Jesus was on the cross, as Jesus was in the tomb on Holy Saturday, the signs were all over the place that this was not the end of the story. Paul Simon wrote that the signs of the prophets were written on the subway walls and tenement halls. How that brings it right back to today, to our life in the 20th and 21st century now, right? The subway walls, tenement halls, the signs are all over the place that Good Friday and Holy Saturday are not the end of the story. And whispered in the sound of silence. What was being whispered on Good Friday and Holy Saturday, only to be realized on Easter Sunday? I love the way the Passion of John, which we will hear on Good Friday, the way this ends. This is John 19, 40 to 42. They took the body of Jesus and bound it with burial clothes with the spices, according to the Jewish burial custom. Now in the place where he had been crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which no one had yet been buried. And so they laid Jesus there, because of the Jewish preparation day, for the tomb was close by. I just have that sense that the care for Jesus' body and it being laid in a new tomb, maybe that is a foreshadowing of what we know is to come on Easter Sunday. And so brothers and sisters, as I leave you today, as we are on the verge of Holy Week, I ask you to stay with the sound of silence a little bit, to stay with the passion of Jesus, to allow the silence to not necessarily leave you desolate or hopeless, but perhaps to leave us in that sense of, how am I going to join my suffering, the sorrows in my life, my passion, with the passion of Christ? It's only in the passion of Christ that our suffering, our pain, our speaking when we feel nobody is listening, our talking when we feel like nobody understands, our sense of maybe being disappointed or even being betrayed by our friends, it's only in our connecting that kind of profound suffering that we recognize that Jesus, through his passion, redeems it all, and it is not in vain. And as we approach Holy Week, let us listen for the whispering of the Lord as we pay attention to the sound of silence. God bless you. Have a Holy Week that's really special. Listen now to this intense and very dramatic rendering of that iconic and classic song by Simon and Garfunkel, as sung by Disturbed. God bless you all.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its scenes while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs and voices never shared, and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, silence.